Agree. I see Angie nodding her head over there for sure. Customers always come first. I think we just talked about that, right? If we follow these things, we're going to have a really good skill set when it comes around negotiations, and we'll do very well with both sides. Communication, does that speak to the negotiation piece that we'll be covering in these 2 hours? Yes. Creativity, ideas before results. Oh my gosh. I can tell you for sure, creativity. We've done a couple of seller financing deals lately where we had one listing that was overpriced by about 100,000, a condo looking over the cruise ships that go out of the port of Miami. And the seller said, "Hey, this is what we want, 950. We know that the last sale price was 875, but that's what we want." And I had this listing for a year. So talk about negotiation. How do you give the seller what they want? Well, and the creativity piece here was, well, since you don't owe anything on the property, Mr. Seller, would you consider seller financing for the right offer? And they said, what does that look like? Well, we said, interest rates have gone up to about 7%, 6.8% of the time. Would you give the buyer a mortgage for 4.9% under market with a 3-year balloon payment? So you're getting 4.9% interest on your money. You don't have to worry about what it appraises for, because that was part of the challenge. He couldn't get that bank financing, the buyer from Pennsylvania from my Miami listing. But the beauty of seller financing, there is no appraisal. So the buyer was comfortable paying more and they didn't have to worry about appraisal. Seller gets what they want, right? Win-win, which is their 950. Buyer from Pennsylvania gets their unit, which they wanted right there overlooking the cruise ships, and they were able to qualify for it without the bank shutting them down. And the seller got a little bit of interest, 4.9% per year for 3 years. So, and the buyer got under market interest rate, 4.9 versus 7% for 3 years. So that's an example of creativity right here in the negotiation process that we'll be covering. Teamwork, everyone achieves more together. And the way I like to view that is when you're negotiating, it's not us negotiating against the other agent. It's a we attitude, right? How can we get this deal done and get our buyer and our seller what they're looking for, right? Another example, you don't want to say my buyer or my seller. That wouldn't be it can kind of have separation as far as, our clients, the buyer, the seller. Trust starts with honesty. As far as like for instance, I was on a listing appointment today, and sometimes I might be a bit too forthcoming when it comes to, we're talking about the listing commission. How much is the seller? It was a 3.125 it's a for sale by owner, 3.125 million he's asking. And we did our listing presentation, and he's saying, well, what's the commission look like now that you had the whole NAR thing, right? So I'm talking about, okay, well, here's the listing commission side. This is what we do. We want X% for this. This is what we require. The question that you have, Mr. Seller, is how much are you looking to pay the 60,000 realtors that are in Miami to incentivize them to bring a buyer to see your property? So we break that up from a negotiation standpoint into a two-pronged approach. First, what we do as the listing agent, and then the buyer side, so that they can kind of break it down slowly, if that makes any sense. Equity opportunities for all people, absolutely. Success results through people. We're all people just dealing with people, buyers, sellers, emotions, and we just want to help each other get what everybody wants here so we can have an outcome that works. Any ahas, questions, comments on the WI4C2Ts? Anyone have one that they prefer more than another? One that resonates with them?
Yeah, I really like the customers always come in first. I think that's definitely one of those that we focus on that. All the other tenants kind of fall in line. Kind of what Takesha said as well earlier about, not thinking of ourselves and simply how much we're going to make out of the deal, but what are our customers going to benefit?
Absolutely, Ethan. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that. Yes, customers always come first. And Gary Keller would call that being a fiduciary versus a co-founder of Keller Williams, a fiduciary versus a functionary, right? There's the functionary approach. How would you guys say, how does that differ, those two approaches that Gary Keller talks about? What's an example of being a functionary, sorry, a fiduciary versus a functionary? Any guesses?
Trustworthy?
Transparency? I think I heard you say transparency. Is that correct?
No, I said trustworthy.
Try support thee. Sorry, my computer connection wasn't too good right there. Maybe you could put it in the chat. Okay, yes, I'm looking right here. Trustworthy. Thank you, Belinda. Absolutely, absolutely. Being trustworthy, absolutely. You want to be trustworthy and trust. Again, trust starts with honesty right there. And that's an important piece of it. And I hear somebody here saying I'm seeing trustworthy, transparent. Absolutely. Okay, so moving on. We're going to talk about the offer process, preparing the offer, write the offer, present the offer, receive and respond, recap AHA's daily success system. Next piece. I like to think of sales as the ability to gracefully persuade, not manipulate, a person or persons into a win-win situation. Bo Bennett, author and PhD. Anyone agree with this? By show of hands, anyone agree with this mode of thinking? See a lot of hands going up. Thank you. Thank you for raising your hands. I see you there. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yep. A lot of hands went up right there. Okay. Next one is offer process. So buyer makes the offer. Seller is going to respond in one of three ways. They're going to counter the offer, accept the offer, or reject the offer. If they counter, you negotiate. If they accept, you begin the contract to close process. And if you reject, buyer agent contacts the listing agent to learn more. Don't assume no means no. I'll tell you one thing right here that I've used in real life to avoid the rejection piece, rejecting the offer as a listing agent. When I first meet, and I learned this from a mentor on a listing presentation 10 years ago. So I was the junior agent. I brought this really experienced high-end agent into the meeting, and I've never heard this in my life. He says, Mr. Seller, Bob, I want you to promise me one thing. When we bring you an offer, as you list the property with us tonight, I want you to promise me that you will either accept any offers that we bring you or make a counter. Is that fair? One or the other. No matter how low the offer is, you're going to A, accept it, or B, you're simply going to make a counter. Is that fair? What do you think the seller said? Absolutely. At the listing presentation, pretty much they'll always say yes, because they can always counter, right? They counter $1 less or the same price is what they want. But at the listing presentation, they're always going to counter the seller, which makes it so from an integrity standpoint, when you bring an offer that might be a lowball offer from another agent or another buyer a month down the road, a few weeks down the road, and it's a lowball offer, you say to your seller, okay, Bob, remember we spoke about this when we discussed the listing. We know it's a low offer, but as we discussed during the listing presentation, let's go ahead and give them a counter offer, right? Because that's what we agreed on at the listing. It's a listing, correct? So that's a way so that you can just eliminate your sellers, if you will, rejecting an offer. Any questions or comments on that? That's a big one.
You're training your seller how to think and not always go straight for the negative. It's not an automatic, that's it. There's like, no, if they're offering, then there is a window for us to play ball.
Absolutely, Takesha. Absolutely. Any other comments on this approach? Questions, thoughts? Yeah. Do you think anyone here, raising your hands, anyone think they'll try that on their next listing presentation when they're working with a seller? Great. I see a couple hands going up there. Fantastic. Absolutely. your negotiations as a listing agent just became infinitely easier if you use that. Right? At the very listing presentation itself, you know they're going to list with you. Oh, one more thing, Bob. I want you to make me this promise. Would you do me this favor? When we bring you offer at any price, I want you to commit to either accept it or make a counter. It's got to be at the listing presentation. It can't be weeks down the road, right? And then you can revert back if they're integrity and people want to be in integrity, they'll remember it. You had an agreement. That's very important. So now you're only dealing with acceptances and counters of offers. You're not dealing with rejections anymore. Okay, next thing here, if they counter the offer, so you want, in my experience, you want to be quick. Negotiations you want to have momentum and respond quickly, because what happens? Buyers are out there, they're looking, they might see another shiny object that just hit the market, and they might go after that one because you didn't get your counter back. And keep in mind, I speak from a listing agent standpoint because I'm primarily listing agent. So what you're hearing is the way a listing agent thinks, not so much a buyer agent. However, just listening to a listing agent's perspective, if you focus more on buyers, tells you how a listing agent thinks as well, and how to get the listing agent what they want, which gets the sellers what they want, which gets your buyers what they want too. So hopefully that's helpful. So you can negotiate, make sure it's fast, the back and forth, as opposed to waiting, because the energy kind of starts to go down if you wait too long. Sometimes you definitely want to go back and forth in writing. That's the best way, getting initials by certain changes. But I've seen it once in a while where you might get agreement verbal. Hey, okay, they're at 825. Would you do 800? Split in the middle. Get some type. Okay, I'll do it. Then get a text perhaps to that effect. But of course, you got to get initials and signatures. But to speed up the process while making it compliant, so you have it there in writing. If they accept, and another thing that comes to mind when I look at countering the offer, can countering be risky if you're representing a buyer or a seller? If so, when? When is countering risky? Any brave hearts want anyone with a birthday in, let's say, February this month? Can I get a volunteer whose birthday is in February to say when countering might be risky, or just simply say, I don't know, when is countering risky?
I don't know. When is countering?
Okay, so Cynthia, happy birthday this month.
It's not my birthday.
Oh, okay, well, thank you for volunteering. Okay. Countering is risky when you're super close. Let's say you got a $900,000 deal and you're like $5,000 apart or $1,000 apart. Because a counter offer is tantamount to a rejection of an offer, right? It's similar if it's in writing to a rejection, which means that all of a sudden there's nothing going on anymore. So sometimes one could lose that $900,000 deal that you're just about to ink simply for a $5,000 counteroffer. Was it really worth losing the $900,000 deal if you're a buyer or a seller for $5,000? You're trading a $5,000 potential gain for a $900,000 gain. Does that make sense? That's when countering is risky. And that's where we as agents, in a respectful way, just need to be, as opposed to being order takers, we need to, as a neutral party who doesn't have commission breath, who is not attached, our job is, the way I see it, our job is to pretend that this buyer or this seller is our brother or sister. I never say mother or father, right? I say, if you were my brother, if you were my sister, right, I would recommend this. But what you do is totally up to you, Mrs. Buyer, Mrs. Seller, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Buyer. So basically just letting them know there is a risk in making a counter if you're about to do a deal. That whole premise of a bird in the hand, right? Has anyone ever heard that bird in the hand? By hands up, show of hands up. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. It simply means that you've got a deal in hand here. Is it worth losing what you got here to try to get something a little bit better over here in the form of a counter, if that makes sense? It's our job as agents to communicate that, not be order takers, but to give our professional opinion as the advisors, because that's why they're paying us thousands and thousands of dollars in commission to give those types of insights, right? Because we're agents. Okay, so accepting the offer, you begin the contract to close process. Fantastic. My suggestion is, at least in Miami, I wish I did this sooner. I wish I had a transaction coordinator, an experienced transaction coordinator to help me with the process so that I could focus on making offers, lead generation, lead follow-up, role play, and negotiating. So that that's my 20%, like the one thing book, 20%. And my focus is on negotiating and have someone else do the contract to close process. So just a thought. Rejecting the offer, I just gave you a way right there. If you're the listing agent, to not have that even be a part of your conversation in the future. So here's another consideration. Say you're representing the buyer, and your buyer goes in, they really want this property. Say they're offering, see the list price is $600,000. You put the price of your market, whatever it might be, 600,000, let's say. 650 is the average in Miami for a single family home, the median home price. So your buyer, it's a $650,000 house, and your buyer really wants this house. They haven't seen anything else they like, and they go in at, say, $575,000. And the seller rejects the offer. Was it risky to go in at 575 as opposed to try to come up a little bit higher so that they'd get a counter? Yes, no. I'd love to see your thoughts in the comments.
It's
in the chat.
it's riskier, because then it could reset the negotiation part. It depends
Absolutely.
on where we're at.
What do you mean by reset the negotiation part? But yeah, you're totally onto something.
Yeah, because like okay, so say they priced it at 600,000, knowing that that's already a low pricing, and then you come in and say 575. It just could, the way I see it is like it wasn't, it's lowballing, and it kind of, it's just not going to be taken seriously, I guess. I'm trying to word it because I experienced something like that before, where it was just like both parties just went their separate ways. It was just like, forget it, we're not interested anymore.
Interesting. So good. Thank you for sharing. So that's, I'm seeing the risk right there of going, there's always risk and reward and everything. So the risk of going in too low, even if they love it, and they probably would have come up, hey, but to the buyer's credit, the buyer's thinking, hey, let's make an offer. The seller can always counter, right? The seller can always counter. The risk in that thinking is that they might not. They might reject it. Then what happens? The buyer's now negotiating against themselves. If they really want it, what do they have to do?
Go up on their price.
Again, exactly. So they're not even negotiating against the seller at this point. They're negotiating against themselves. Whereas if they'd gone in a little higher, maybe put a 6 in front of it, let's say, they would have gotten a counter offer from the buyer, sorry, from the seller. So they're not negotiating against themselves. That's the thought process right there. So yes, thank you for sharing that. So any other questions on this before we move on?
I just had one question. Okay, so with the scenario you were giving, what if I'm representing the buyer, and it does happen, but and it's understandable, but what if they just said, hey, look, they want 600, we think it's fair 575, and you have that type of buyer where they're just, hey, we're just going to lowball, we want to come out on top. And some buyers, they tell their agents, hey, we want to pay what we want to pay, obviously. And it's just like, how do you handle that? I guess is a question I'm asking, because if they're saying, hey, we can afford 625, but we feel best if we just only offered 575 to every house that we come across.
Great question, Adam. So what I would say, Mr. Buyer, it's a valid point. I get you. Well, let me just show you how many. So here we are in this zip code, whatever your zip code is. Here are the houses, single family, available between 600 and 650,000. Okay, let's see how many months of inventory There are. Okay, so there's 10 houses available and 5 are selling per month in this zip code, in this price range, 600 to 650. So how many months of inventory would that be, Mr. Buyer? That is 10 divided by 5. So if nothing else came on the market at 5 houses selling per month, everything would be sold within 2 months. Question, is that a seller's advantage, seller's market, or is that a buyer's market? Just for you as agents.
Feel that be a buyer's market? No, I'm sorry, sellers.
It's a seller's advantage.
Yeah.
So the rule of thumb is that a neutral market in any price range, any zip code, you name it. There's a software that I use, it's called Trend Graphics with an X at the end, Trend Graphics. I use it with every single buyer, every single seller I use. Our office, got a subscription and some agents chipped in, but it's really well worth it. Before I ever go to MLS, I go to that Trend Graphics, and I want to know, is it a seller's market when I'm talking to this buyer who wants to offer 575 on a 650, or is it a buyer's market? Because then I give context for what they're about to do. So, okay, so 6 months, again, is a neutral market where neither the seller nor the buyer has the advantage. If it's less than 6 months, which we just talked about, there's 10 available and there's 5 selling per month. It's 10 divided by 5 is a 2 month of inventory. Complete seller's market. It means prices are going up month by month. And that, we saw that throughout COVID, especially single family houses across the country. You saw 2 weeks of inventory. But I need to communicate that to so here we are, we're realtors, 50 realtors on this call. And we don't all know that the seller's advantage and the buyer's advantage. Imagine the buyers and the sellers, they don't know what's going on in each zip code, in each price range. So if we can inform them before they start negotiating, okay, Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, you're getting into a seller's market where there's only 2 months of inventory, which means automatically that this seller is going to be receiving multiple offers. No matter what we're seeing in the news, it's 2 months of inventory. They're going to be receiving new multiple offers on this listing that came on the market 3 days ago. So in order for us to compete, in order for us to win, knowing that we'll be competing, what would you want to go in at to make sure that we win this property? What price are you thinking? And I don't think they're going to say 575 if you present it to them up front, because the longer they wait, I'm just going to get 575 on the next one. Thumbs up, Adam. Prices are climbing in the market as they stall, and as they go it's not going to get easier for them. It's going to get harder because prices are climbing with 2 months of inventory. It's a different story if you have the condo market here in Miami right now with 30-year-old condos or older. You've got like 2 or 3 or 4 years, not months, years of inventory. Prices are spiraling down right now for condos in Miami that are over 30 years old because of the Surfside incident that we had a few years ago. A lot more regulations in terms of having to have a certain amount of structural integrity. A lot of assessments are coming. So there are sellers that cannot afford, owners that cannot afford to stay in their condos that are older than 30 years old. So yes, for that type of buyer, absolutely. If this seller doesn't agree to it, go on to the next one. Somebody's going to take your 575 or lower offer, if that makes sense. Okay, so moving on. Thank you for your feedback, Adam. I hope that answers the question right there. But first, try to understand how many months of inventory there are before you talk pricing, before you make an offer. And one tool that you can use is Trend Graphics and see what your team leader recommends, if not that one. Okay. Trying to get to the next slide here. Okay, stop there for a second. Okay, go back. Okay, so there we are. Ahas. Any ahas from that session that we just had, that section? Any ahas? Can I get one aha? One note that you might have written down? Nothing? Ooh, I'm not doing too well here. No ahas?
I have one. I liked the way when you did your listing presentation where you didn't really give them an option to reject an offer.
Thank you, Angie. Perfect. Appreciate that. We can proceed. Okay, so now we're preparing the offer. Okay, ensure the property is still available. That's a good one. Build rapport with the listing agent, yeah, because you don't want to go through this whole process just to have the listing agent tell you, oh, it's under contract. Now your buyer's hopes are up, you know, and they're going to be very disappointed at you if it was already under contract. They got their hopes up. Build rapport with the listing agent. You want to call them in advance. Hey, how's it going? Just want to see if we could do a deal here. You know, what would it take for us to make a deal happen? Are you getting a lot of showings? Does your seller want a long closing? Do they want a short closing? What does your seller want? Because I want to communicate with the buyer and get your seller whatever they want, right? I shouldn't say your seller, but in this case, I'm saying your seller, the seller. Ask if there's any other offers on the property. Why did they fall through? What's the status? Ask the question, like I just said, what's the seller motivation? What do they need out of this deal? Ask the listing agent how they want to receive the offer by dotloop or DocuSign or email, or heck, I'll deliver it if that's what helps Mr. Listing Agent, Miss Listing Agent. Obtain the buyer's pre-approval from the lender, review the MLS, do a competitive market analysis for your buyer so they see what is fair, and also trend graphics or whatever it is to show them how many months of inventory. Obtain a seller's disclosure statement from the listing agent and other needed documents. Great. Write the offer, price and terms, seller's disclosure, what comes with the conveyance means what comes with the property. True story. An agent of who I knew in my office once had a deal almost fall through on a $5 million listing back in 2005. Imagine what $5 million back then would be worth today. He almost had a deal fall through from a tablecloth. The seller says, that's my grandmother's tablecloth. It's been an heirloom for ages. That's staying with me. And the buyer said, no, I insist. I was told that this tablecloth comes with the house. It's beautiful. It's a one-of-a-kind tablecloth. I love it. I'm paying $5 million for this house. I want that tablecloth. The deal almost fell through because of that, even though one could argue, okay, it's not a fixture. But just to be crystal clear on your contract, what conveys with the property and what doesn't. Chandeliers are a common item, curtains, drapes, that type of thing. You don't want to assume anything. You want to be crystal clear on what goes with the house and what the seller will be taking with them to their next place.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Olga.
So when we write the offer, so we are supposed to put inside in the offer if I want that table or if I want anything inside. If I put that, is it okay? Or is not allowed because the loan officer is not gonna loan my is not gonna work with us for the comment that they want that dining room or whatever.
Good question, Olga. I guess I was showing the exaggeration of how important it can be to be crystal clear on what's included and what is not, right? So yes, it's not going to be that in every situation, almost like I've only seen it once in 24 years where it came down to a tablecloth, which is not even a fixture. But for instance, chandeliers, that might be something you want to include because there is sometimes disagreement on a chandelier. Buyer thought they were getting this chandelier. Seller said, oh no, that's an heirloom. That doesn't come with the property. I'll get you something from Home Depot instead, right? So just be clear on what conveys. It's better to communicate too much than to have a disagreement. I know agents that have paid for washing machines and dishwashers at closing when the seller left it without a washing machine or a dishwasher. And the buyer said, wait a second, I thought it was coming with a dishwasher or a washing machine. And to make the deal stick, the realtor in certain situations said, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Let's just close on this deal. Earnest money. You want to make sure, I've had several situations in the last 3 months where the buyer on one of our listings did not put in an earnest money deposit. They didn't put in the $5,000 first deposit, let's say, as we're going through the contract. At that point, the deal is already dead. You can, because the buyer's not performing according to the contract. They're putting some buyers will put many offers out there at the same time and not put any money at risk, even though they have the written offer saying, okay, here's my 5,000 deposit. So you as the listing agent, let's say, you need to be aware of that and get the attorney involved for your client, if you're the seller, early, so that this deal doesn't go any further because the buyer is not performing. So if you're on the buyer side, naturally, you're going to want to make sure that money, that escrow deposit letter is sent per the contract within a few days of you having a written, agreed upon purchase agreement. Due diligence inspection period. You want to specify how many days is it, right? For the buyer, the longer it is for the buyer, the better. For the seller, the shorter it is, the better. So you want to negotiate the due diligence or inspection period. And here's a little pro tip. Don't even call it an inspection period. Call it, if I'm talking to my seller, I call it a decision period. So you know, Miss Seller, this 7-day inspection period, don't even think of it as an inspection period. It's a decision period, at least in Florida. The seller, the buyer, can decide if they're going to move forward or not within 7 days. Doesn't matter what their inspections yield. It's their decision period. Just so we have to understand that. Any questions or comments on that piece of it, on that little nuance, on a way to speak to a seller? Okay. Why does it matter that you call it a decision period when you're talking to a seller?
It's all about mindset. If you change the language that you use, not only with your buyers and your sellers, but and I hate calling them transactions, but that's what they are. Their transactions flow a little differently. It gives them an insight on what the buyer may be going through, because they might eventually be a buyer. And when they see option, it makes you think either I can or I can't, versus there's something else in there that maybe I can do.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's all about mindset. It's all about language. We're in they call it the language of sales for a reason. There's a KW class called Language of Sales, which is highly recommended. That's really our skill set at the end of the day. It's how well we converse and communicate in the language of sales, so we can either do it through experience and do it over and over, or we can take classes and put that to the test, as you guys are doing right here, so that when you have a real life situation, you've learned a thing or two from each class you go to in terms of the language, and you've gotten nuances so far, not calling it inspection period or due diligence period. At least in Florida, you can call it, no contract says it's called a decision period, but as I'm talking to my client, I'm calling it a decision period, because it means that for any reason, the buyer can walk away, Miss Seller. So it's not a question of your house being in beautiful shape. Just so I'm managing their expectations is what I'm doing. I'm managing their expectations, and that's what we're trying to do along the way. Time for seller acceptance. It's important that so how many days do you guys like to give for seller acceptance? Do you like, if you're making an offer on behalf of a buyer, how long do you give the seller to respond to you on your offers? Maybe put in the chat. I'm chuckling. I'm chuckling at the chat right here. Hey, go. Thank you very much, Takesha. I appreciate your engagement, and I love what let's see, who just responded? Girl, just do it. Jessica responded. We quiet up in here. We want to learn from the best. Good stuff. Good stuff. But yeah, the more we all ask questions, because surely there's questions. Put them in the chat if you don't feel comfortable saying them, and maybe someone can read them out loud if I don't get to them. But all these questions are valid, because if one person is asking, another has it. So 24 hours to respond unless they disclose differently. Okay. 1 day is what I'm hearing Olga say. ASAP. Takesha, yeah. 3 days, Kim Duke says. 5 business days, Jessica Huerta. Normally 24 hours. Yeah. It's a business decision, isn't it? It's depends on the market. It depends on your buyer. It depends on the seller. It depends how long it's been on the market. It depends if you think there's multiple offers going on. Personally, I like to do 2 days to respond rather than one, myself, in one person's opinion. I give them 2 days to respond, 2 calendar days, not business days. That's enough time. Whereas where I won't be trying to rush the seller into making a decision, which they may not be able to do. It's like I don't know, being cordial to the seller, if you will. But that's just my opinion. 1 day is valid. I've done 1 day before. I've done 5 day before. So it really depends on the situation. Okay. Financing terms, that's a big one, especially when you have multiple offers on the table. If you've got one that has a lower down payment versus one that has a bigger down payment, if I'll see 5 or 6 offers that I'm representing the seller, when I'm starting to pick and choose which is the strongest offer that's most likely to close, when I'm talking to the seller, evaluating the offers, they're taking my opinion as to which one they should respond to. And it's going to be typically the one that has the best financing terms. Cash, number one, right? There's no risk. There's no appraisal. There's no underwriting. There's no bank involved. You can close in 2 weeks if need be. So that's number one. Whereas, and there might be one that has 50% down and then only a 50% mortgage. That's going to be stronger and more likely to close than one that's putting 5% down and 95% financing if you've got multiple offers, right? So these are just some of the things that I've observed as an agent. Buyer pre-approval letter, for sure. You want to put that in there with your offer, showing how qualified this buyer is, for sure. You want to even encourage, see if you can get the listing agent, if you're the representing buyer, get the listing agent on the phone with the mortgage broker so the mortgage broker can sell. And we've done this a lot. We get a mortgage broker who's really good at selling his offers for his clients to the listing agent. Oh man, these guys are great. Don't worry, I'll have the appraisal done within 7 days. This is watertight. This deal will close in 21 days. So when the listing agent hears that and they've got multiple offers or just one offer, and they hear that from the mortgage broker, who's a good salesperson and delivers, that is going to give you so much credibility, and the listing agent will be able to communicate this to the seller so that you get a deal that they'll take your offer over even a cash offer sometimes. That's happened to us twice when we get the mortgage broker on the phone with a listing agent. That's an important piece right there. Closing date. So does the seller want a long closing? Do they want a quick closing? Don't assume that they want a quick closing, because sometimes they want a lot. They want time to move their stuff out and go to the next place. Okay. Home warranty. I don't do a lot of home warranties. Who here, by show of hands or in the chat, anyone here use home warranties, and any feedback on how that works for them? To Keisha, thank you. So how does that help you, the home warranty, in your deals?
Which side, seller side or buyer side?
Either, whatever comes to mind.
Okay, so on my seller side, if it is, I know that there are some things that they need to fix, but either they don't have the energy, they're just ready to move on to the next season, or whatever reason they have, I can tell them, hey, if you offer them a home warranty on XYZ, just say something dealing with something, and you don't really have to worry about that if it breaks down. It still works, but you can't put it new. So give them a home warranty, and that way, that's one less thing you have to worry about. They're generally good with that because they're not really trying to fix anything. On the buyer side, when it gets to the point of where they're like, oh my gosh, I want this fixed, I got to do this, they better do this, or else I'm not going to pay this. It's like, hey, look, number one, it's still working, it's still functional. You can go and how about you just go and, let this go until the wheels fall off. Use your home warranty if it is that thing fails you. So it's just another negotiation tool, and it just gives both of them a peace of mind on something that's not critical, that's not deal breakers.
Thank you for sharing that. That's an example of win-win or no deal, right? They're both winning. Seller and the buyer are winning. Everyone's winning by using the home warranty. Nicely done. Repair limits. Here in Miami, we do a lot of as is with right to inspect, that decision period where the buyer can walk for any reason. 20 years ago, it wasn't the as is with right to inspect. It was repair limits. Do you guys in your different markets, do you have repair limits, or do you have as is with right to inspect? Decision period, if you will, for any reason you can walk if you're a buyer. I see Keisha shaking her head. Anyone
No,
there in the Jessica
that's
Warren?
only during our decision period that you can do that, or lender required repairs.
Okay, got it, got it. Special clauses, addenda, important. If you're making an offer, you want to make sure you put all the addenda in there. Just have it as accurate and neat as possible. I'm just talking from an agent's, listing agent standpoint. It gives you confidence when you see a cleanly written offer that it says, okay, this is an agent, a buyer's agent who's attentive to detail. It's a professional here. And I will give that same feedback to the seller. This is a professional here. They've done a very clean offer. Nothing is missing. The pre-approval letter's there. The addenda are there. And that will inspire confidence in the seller. And that will help the buyer win the deal and make a deal happen. Okay. Okay. So review the contract, be sure talk through the offer. So review the contract, be sure your buyer understands the contract, review details like the price, the closing date, the inspection, the contingencies, the conveyances, know what is essential in your area, know the standard or common terms for offers in your area, avoid rookie agent mistakes. And an example that they use was having a 30-day inspection period. That's not customary. That's longer than the 7 to 15 you might see here, at least in the South Florida, Miami market. Present the offer. Okay, so double check all the documents, follow the instructions, label all the documents clearly, order documents logically, email the summary. It's nice to have bullet points just in a quick glance. Here's the offer, offering full price cash, 7-day inspection period, close in 30 days, that type of thing, along with the offer. Have an email summary, notify the listing agent. You don't want it to get lost in the listing agent's email. You might want to text them or call them or both. Hey, just so you know, I sent you an offer. Expires in 2 days. Look forward to working with you. Add all documents to command. Consult with your buyer. Any ahas on that page right here? Questions, comments? Okay. Next one, receive and respond. So make sure the offer is complete, receive and review the offer, confirm the receipt of offer. So you can let the buyer agent know, yes, we've received the offer. Get the offer to the seller in a timely manner. Create the executive summary, as we talked about, with some bullet points in your email, your subject letter, your cover letter, if you will. Call the buyer's agent. Call the lender to verify the pre-approval letter, which was what we talked about. So getting your buyer's lender on the phone with the listing agent, that's a critical piece for the listing agent to feel comfortable. Create an outline document to reference when you call the sellers. Buyer makes offer. Okay, so we went through this already. Counters the offer, negotiation, accepts the offer. We went through this already. Okay, so good. We've just covered the making offers part of this class. And before we go into hour number 2, which is negotiations, can I get 3 ahas from this class, notes that you jotted down that you think will help you moving forward?
Only give 1 day for the acceptance.
Uh-huh. Thank you, Jessica. Awesome. Who else? Any other ahas?
The note at the end right here where you said 30 days was too long for the inspection.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I'm new. So I didn't know that. I haven't even started yet out here in Northern California. But knowing that, you're saying the 7 to 15 days is normal
In South Florida, in Miami. You know, for anyone else
in
who's in
Miami.
Northern California who might be on the call, or ask your team leader or someone else,
Okay.
30 days would be a long time in here, Miami, for residential real estate. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Very good. Can I get one more aha from this material on making offers? Anything you wrote down, any notes that you think will be helpful for you moving forward?
When you did the inspection period and change it to the decision-making period.
Thank you, Angie. Appreciate it. Yep. Decision period, decision-making period. Absolutely. Okay. So. Moving on now. And here's a good quote. Can someone read this out loud?
I engage every conversation in the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in a relationship with me.
Nice. Thank you, Sarah. Just a good positive way of looking at it. The Y4C 2Ts. That's a good quote right there. Okay, so we won't do any role play on this particular one. You want to, let's see, moving forward here. Now we're moving on to the next session. Yeah, we can just go right through it, or we could take a 2-minute break. But my suggestion is there's a lot of content. That way we don't have to, we'll just we'll keep that momentum and keep moving, if that's okay with you. Okay, I see some heads nodding. Thank you.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
Good. So prepare for next session, negotiating offers. In the chat, could you please put what questions you come to mind regarding negotiations in real estate? Anything you want to have answered during this next hour? Okay. And thank you for your feedback there in the chats, everybody. It's great to see you engaging right there. Okay. I'm new, so all of it helps, Jerry. Absolutely. It helps all of us. I just want to know the different techniques people use. Okay. Understood. Back here. Stop share. Get back to the screen. I'm just trying to advance the page right here. Okay, gonna go into the next one. Here we go. Okay, do you see my screen right here? Negotiate offers. Thank you for the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Good. Okay, so here we go right over here, slideshow. Okay. Okay, so now we're on to number 18, which is negotiate offers now that we've made and now that we've received an offer. What is negotiation? The 3 Ps of negotiation. Negotiation tips, recap and ahas, daily success system. Can someone read this out loud from Lee Steinberg, a great sports agent and author?
Negotiation is not something to be avoided or feared. It is an everyday part of life.
Absolutely. Thank you, Takesha. Yes. Every day we're negotiating, right? Which Y4C2Ts of Keller Williams culture relate back to the negotiation process? We covered this earlier. All of them relate back to the negotiation process. What's the path of a negotiation? There's 2 options after an offer is presented. Offer, it gets accepted, and then you close is option 1. Option 2, it's going to get rejected or countered. Well, we've done everything we can in hour number 1 to minimize rejected offers moving forward in the language that we use, in the way that we prepare a seller or a buyer, right? How do you prepare a seller not to reject an offer? Anyone?
Make them
You have to make the promise to either accept or to counter.
9:00.
Exactly, exactly. When you first take the listing, if you're representing the seller, the listing agent, you're saying, hey, can you do me a favor, Bob? I'm gonna ask you this one favor. I want you to promise me that you'll either accept offers when they come in, or you'll make counter offers, no matter how low they are, because that way we can keep the negotiation alive. Is that fair? And 99% of the time, the seller will agree with you if it's at the listing appointment, right?
I love that. That is a dynamite tactic.
You like that?
I definitely do.
Good, 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 good. Happy it helps. You're not, so yes, that's a good one right there. So that will minimize rejections from sellers. So how do you minimize rejections if you're working with a buyer? What did we cover in the last hour?
Like creativity.
Yeah, creativity, Sarah. Yeah. What's a way to be creative when you're working with a buyer and minimize the chance that their offer will be rejected as opposed to countered?
Well, understanding what the seller's motives are, or as much information about what the seller's looking for, and then figuring out how you can match it up against what the buyer's looking for before you present the offer.
Nice. Okay, so I'm hearing you say that you as the buyer rep, you would speak with a listing agent and say, hey, are you looking for a short closing? Are you looking for a long closing? What's important to your seller so that I can craft and present an offer that works for your seller? That's what I'm hearing you say, correct?
Yes.
Awesome, awesome. Another way to not to get your buyer's offer rejected that we covered is educating the buyer before they make the offer in terms of what's happening in the market for that price point. Let's say a single family home, 600 to 650, or 800 to 900 in this zip code, wherever you may be across the country. This is what is happening. There are 10 listings in the let's say there's 20 listings between 8 and 900 in this zip code, and 2 are selling per month between 8 and 900 in that zip code. How many months of inventory would that be? 20 listings, 2 are selling a month.
Is it 10?
Exactly, Adam. It's 10 months. You simply divide 20 divided by 2. So if 2 properties sell every month, to the time you get to 20 properties sold, which is the inventory you've got, it would take 10 months at 2 per month to sell. So 10 months, excuse me if this is going a little bit too far ahead, but it's important. 10 months of inventory is a buyer's market. 10 months of inventory means that prices are coming down because it's over 6 months, which is neutral. In that case, you've got less risk if you're representing a buyer and they want to go in with a lower offer, because they are in a buyer's market where there's more buyers than sellers. There's more sellers than buyers out there. Case in point, 30-year or older condos in Miami right now. You can be throwing lowball offers to 10 different sellers, and 3 of those sellers will jump at your offer because they want that offer, because prices are going down right now in Miami for the older condos. Okay. There's going to be a point where that will stop instantly. It'll turn from fear. I've seen it 2 or 3 times so far in my career, 24 years. There's a moment in time where the market psychology will go from fear, where it is now if you're a seller in Miami for a 30-year-old condo, to greed, or for a buyer who's out there looking, I don't want to make an offer now. I know it's an incredible deal, but these assessments and the insurance is going up and all kinds of stuff. The maintenance is going up. But at some point, the prices are going to get so low that people are going to jump on at the same time. And all of a sudden, the market psychology has just changed from fear to greed in a moment. So that's how that works. Negotiation, accepted, rejected. Okay, so again, we're trying to eliminate rejection altogether in this class right here. Then you close. Then you go to close. Okay, your clients, the agent on the other side of the transaction. There's the buyer's agent, there's the seller's agent, there's the buyer, there's the seller. Try not to say my buyer, my seller. Just say the seller, the buyer. Better yet, the buyer, John, would like to work with the seller, Maria, and make this deal happen. Then there are humans talking to each other. It's no longer just buyers and sellers. It's like people, right? Price, usually the prime factor, the cost of the property. Terms, either financial, time-based, or both. Okay, so what do they mean by terms, financial, time-based, or both? Any thoughts on that?
The lender may need more than just your, standard 14 to 21 days. So you will have to go off of whatever it is that they're saying.
Yes, absolutely. They determine a lot of times what needs to be done to make the deal happen. Yes, Takesha. Yeah. I'm looking to see if there's any other questions here in the comments in the chat. And we gave another example earlier, either financial, time-based, or both. So an example where usually the prime factor is price. I'll give you an example I had during COVID 2020. We were getting 5 to 10 offers on every single listing you put out there on the MLS back then. It wasn't 6 months of inventory. It wasn't 5 months of inventory. It was like 2 weeks of inventory. It was a dramatic seller's market. Prices rose 25% in South Florida, 2021 after COVID. And because there were so many buyers moving to South Florida at that point, and they wanted a place to live. So we had one townhouse that we went door knocking on the neighborhood to see if people would sell. We got the listing, and the seller said, so we received 5 offers at the open house. 50 people came through the open house. We received 5 offers by that following Monday, and $950 was our asking price. Some of those offers were $1 million, so 50,000 over asking. Some were $950. So usually the prime factor is price, but here's an example where it wasn't the prime factor. We had the $1 million finance deal and the $950 cash deal. What do you think the sellers chose?
Okay, did your seller have some place to go first before I can answer that?
They didn't have, they were going to move back to Milwaukee. They were going to move back to Milwaukee, Takesha. Yes.
Okay, so back to my hometown. I'm gonna say cash.
Cash. And that, yes. And Susie agrees with you. Olga agrees with you. Gerald agrees with you. Ethan agrees with you. Michelle agrees with you. Yes. Ding, 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 ding. You're all right. Why did they go with $950 cash instead of $1 million financed?
It was a for sure deal.
Yes, Angie, a for sure deal. Meaning, why was it for sure?
Because it was cash. They didn't have to wait for make sure the financing went through. There was no, like Michelle said, there's no risk. It was a done deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no risk. And part of that risk, financing, appraisal, will it appraise? That's another big piece of the financing piece where the $950 cash was so one did not apply as it usually does here on the left. Price is usually the prime factor. It was not the prime factor here. The terms of the lower offer made it more attractive to go with the $950. And I completely supported the seller's decision to do that to avoid the risk. Yeah. Because if the seller, when it's brand new on the market, it's a super hot property, right? You've got multiple offers within 3 or 4 days of it hitting the market. What would happen if you go through this financing period for 30 to 45 days with the $1 million finance buyer and it doesn't appraise and the deal falls through? What happens now to the seller? Sorry, I don't hear you, Takesha. Or Angie.
They start over, and then people are gonna look at it like what was wrong with the property instead of what happened to the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. You only get one chance to make that first impression as a house to the market. So this was their one chance to be fresh on the market. Days are counting. It's public information. It's on all the websites, right? So you'll never have a chance to have that be a fresh listing. And what we tell the sellers on every listing appointment that we do is, Mr. Seller, it's like when we first introduced this to the market, to the multiple listing service, it's like bread coming out of the oven. It's delicious. It smells good. It's soft. It tastes good. It's amazing. What happens to bread after it's been out for a while? It gets stale. It's not like a fine wine that gets better and better, right? No. So the risk for the seller in going to that $1 million offer that was financed, now it shows 30 days on market. They'll never get 5 offers again, like they did when it was fresh bread coming out of the oven. So that was the risk that the seller was trying to avoid by choosing better terms rather than a higher price. I just want you guys to see that perfect, that prime example of price versus terms. Excellent. Okay. Okay, 3 P's of negotiation. Okay, any ahas? Can I get one aha from this little piece right here?
Yeah, I have one. Seller's first impression on the market, like when they're putting their property out, they only get that one chance. That was a good.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it. Yes. And can I get one more aha? Anyone?
I have another one. I'm sorry.
Thank
I have
you. No,
another
please
one.
don't be sorry.
I had another one, educating the buyer when they're making offers.
Yes, educate the buyer. Exactly. Educate them what the market, what's going on in the market. Is it a seller's market that they're entering? Is it a buyer's market? Let them know so they know the landscape before they start making offers. Before you even start looking at the MLS and what's available, you want to look at the months of inventory, which there is software out there that lets you do it. I use Trend Graphics with an X at the end. I don't work for them or anything, but that's what we use here. I think they're national. I'm not sure, but ask your team leader who they recommend to get that information. And all you need to do is get your zip code, single family or condo, whatever it is. And don't go too fine. Don't get too detailed or granular with your price range. Do like 100,000, 600 to 700, 500 to 600, that type of thing, right? It'll give you a 30,000 foot view of what's going on with that market. Then you can get more granular with the MLS. Then you can do price per square foot if that applies, which it doesn't always apply depending on what kind of neighborhood you live in. You know, is it brand new homes, all cookie cutter, the same thing where price per square foot might really matter? Or are they older homes with different styles and different prices per square foot because you have bigger lots, smaller lots, which kind of confuses price per square foot sometimes. 3 P's of negotiation. What are those? What are the 3 P's of negotiation? Prepare, present, position. Preparation is the key to building confidence and ensuring a smooth negotiation process. Present, move into negotiation process by presenting the offer. I think the preparation piece here is what I just talked to you about, letting if you're representing buyer, letting them know how many months of inventory there are, right? Letting them know, you know what, we have 3 months of inventory in this price range, in this zip code. Expect that the seller on this fresh bread right out of the oven, 2 days on the market listing, is going to be receiving multiple offers. Miss Buyer, it's going to be a situation where we have to win the property. Because if we go in anything, list price is the opening bid price. Based on my interpretation of the market right here, Miss Buyer, the list price will be the opening bid price. What does that mean? Anyone? What am I telling the buyer to do when I say the list price is the opening bid price based on the landscape of the market according to the data in Trend Graphics with 2 months of
It's
inventory?
like to take into consideration, this is a good, I think someone said starting point, this is where we're gonna begin.
Yes. So if they're asking 650 and you've got 2 months of inventory, Adam, between 600 and 700. What I'm communicating to the buyer is that if you want to win the property, right? If you want to win it, we're going to go in, we're going to need to go in at 650 list price or higher. That's the opening bid price. So you're managing their expectations in the way you communicate, and you're being honest. There's no commission breath here. You're simply interpreting the data, which is why you're getting the commission of thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to be detached from the outcome, just like a surgeon would, just like a world-class attorney. They're going to tell facts as they see them. Let the chips fall where they may. That's why we're getting paid a lot of money to give this type of guidance, right? They might not want to hear that. They might want to have hope that they can go in at a lowball offer. But our job is to interpret the market, right? By the same token, if we see 15 months of inventory, is that a seller's market or a buyer's market? Buyer's market. I see your lips moving, Takesha. Buyer's market. Are we going to say, okay, they're asking 650. I would go in. 650 is your opening bid price if there's 15 months of inventory, which is a buyer's market. Am I going to say that to my buyer? Yes, no? Anyone?
If it's 15 months, no.
Yes, correct. You're not going to say to go in with at full price in 15 months of inventory. It's been on the market 60 days, right? There's room to start in lower because you don't have to go in at full price because the buyers have the advantage and the listing has gotten stale. So that's an example right there. Those are examples of preparing your buyer, right? Present. Move into the negotiation process by presenting the offer. Position. Move both parties closer until you have full agreement. Just keep going back. And that's why you never want to have a rejection, right? You want to prepare the seller to never reject. So you keep moving both parties closer and closer and closer and closer. One thing that you might consider not on a cash deal, but on a buyer mortgage deal, it's called breaking it down to the ridiculous. So say the seller is at 650 and your buyer is at 640. They're $10,000 apart, which sounds like a lot, right? This is where you do the break it down to the ridiculous. How much would a $10,000 mortgage over 30 years at 7% interest be? If there's any mortgage gurus here on the Zoom with us, a $10,000 mortgage, and there's all, go to mortgage.com or calculator.com or something, $10,000 mortgage, 30 years at 7% interest, let's say. I'm looking at, I don't know if someone can read, let's see.
66.
Pennies. Yeah, I'm hearing pennies. Yeah. So it might be, I'm just gonna guess. Let's say it's $100 a month, right? If that.
$56.
50, how much is it, Cynthia?
$66.
$66, which is $2 a day, right? So half the cost of a cup of Starbucks is what's keeping us in this, what sounds like a lot, $10,000. We're literally a half cup of Starbucks away from a deal happening here. Is this home worth half a cup of Starbucks a day? That's what you call breaking it down to the ridiculous. So you basically do the mortgage on that difference, and it could be $20,000. It's a cup of Starbucks. 20,000 sounds like a lot, right? But when you put it in perspective and do what's 20,000, 30-year mortgage, 7%, okay, that's in this case 120, something like $130, like Cynthia would have referred to, $130 divided by 30 days in the month. 130 divided by 30. So that's $4.33 a day. That's a cup of Starbucks, at least in South Florida. Maybe it's more elsewhere. You're a cup of coffee. You're a cup of coffee away from a deal. Is this house, this home, worth a cup of coffee a day in order to win it, Miss Buyer, Mr. Buyer? Any questions on that? But you cannot do that with a cash deal, only a finance deal. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so know your goal. So prepare, know your goal, know your client, think ahead, set clear expectations. We did that. You know, it's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. Okay, Miss Buyer, Mr. Buyer, expect that there's going to be more than one offer on this property because it's fresh out of the oven, fresh bread. And we're in a seller's market with 2 months of inventory, 3 months of inventory. So you're setting clear expectations. Or, as you have here in Miami with 30-year-old condos or older, okay, prices are going down pretty rapidly, Mr. Seller. We're in peak season for condos in Miami right now until April. And that's when the hurricanes come in. That's when it gets warmer. All the tourists start to go back to other parts of the country, other parts of the world. Fewer buyers, less demand. We need to see if we can wrap up that buyer now while we're in peak season in February. Boat show is here. Coconut Grove Arts Festival is here. Formula One racing is coming to town. This is the time to sell this condo, Miss Seller. Be informed, obey the laws, know the documents inside and out. That's okay. Ask purposeful questions. Provides you with the points you'll negotiate on. Provides insight on where you and your client can have leverage, will have leverage. Sets clear expectations. Allows you to get to know your client and their goal. Helps you learn what will make it a win-win negotiation for both parties. Anyone have any feedback on these questions? Any thoughts? Questions? Examples of questions?
I have just one when we were talking about just like breaking it down to the ridiculous. One of the things that I've noticed, you can use that, and I would most likely layer it on top of now, what number are you going to kick yourself with when you find out that this home sold and you didn't offer it knowing you had the opportunity? And when they tell me, oh, I will go XYZ, well, you know what? Offer that because then you know you gave your best. Let's not kick tires.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to share that on our Friday meeting coming up. At what number, how do you phrase it? What number would you kick yourself?
I asked them at when you find out what this house sold for, at what number would you have kicked yourself when you found out what it sold for?
When you
And
find
whatever
out,
number that is, that's what you offer.
when you find out what this house sold for,
Mhm.
at what number would you kick yourself that you didn't make that offer?
Yep.
Oh, that's good.
And then when they tell you, you say, and that's the offer you should offer. You put your best foot forward. And that way, if it comes in over, guess what? You did your best. You did what it is that you know. But if it doesn't, then guess what? You can't be mad at me because it's your decision at the end of the day. I'm just here to navigate through the journey.
Nice. Thank you, Takesha. So when you find out what this house sold for, at what number would you kick yourself that you didn't make that offer? Is that correct? That you didn't make that offer. That's the number you should offer.
I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you. Awesome. That's really gold right there, folks. You didn't make that offer. Good stuff. Good. And that's the thing about this business, you know, you're learning every day. There's so many different things out there. You're learning every day, no matter how long you're in the business, you're always going to get another question, another comment, another way of putting things into perspective that will help you on your next deal. That, you know, for instance, 24 years in the business, I could use that moving forward for the rest of my career. And I haven't heard that ever in 24 years. So it's a great comment. It's a great, there's a great class called 6 Personal Perspectives. Any hands up for that one? Anyone heard of Keller Williams' 6 Personal Perspectives? The class that Gary Keller teaches, the co-founder of our company. Really good. One of the 6 personal perspectives is being learning based. No matter how much you know about the business as you go through your career, always be like an empty bowl. Just because if you know everything, then the knowledge starts to overflow and you're not able to put more knowledge in there. So pretend, what's his name? John Wooden, champion coach for the UCLA Bruins back in the, I think, 60s and 70s, won 11 NCAA titles. He said, you want to have an empty mind, you know, just even when you know it all, still pretend you know nothing so that the knowledge continues to pour into you and you continue to break through your ceiling of achievement. Awesome. So moving forward here, open-ended questions. Open versus closed questions. Open-ended questions. Questions that have unlimited response options. What additional information should I know? What's important about closing in 30 days? That's a good one. How do you feel about that? Closed-ended questions. Questions that expect a specific response, often yes, no, or one word. Do you have to sell your home by a specific date? Do you have any other offers? That's a good one. You want to get the seller to agent to say yes or no. What is the bottom line price you would consider? That's not really a yes or no, but that's a one-word answer. Okay. What would happen if, oh, well, you just said that, Takesha. What would happen in a way? Well, you just said that's a what would happen if question. What would happen if the seller sold it for a price that you would have kicked yourself that you didn't offer that price? Helps you anticipate the next steps of the negotiation. Why is this important to you? Helps you gain more information and gain more insights. Yes, you want the seller or want your client, your buyer, your seller, the other agent, you want them to do the talking. I know it's a cliche. You learn more. You've got 2 ears, 1 mouth for a reason, and that's to listen. Get them talking. How do you get other people talking? To learn more, to understand better communication. Why 4C2Ts that we talked about? It's by asking open-ended questions, get people talking, then you're going to learn so much that will help you get what they want because they told you when they were communicating. Okay. Take action scenario. Work with a partner. We won't do the work with a partner. List clarifying questions to your client. Apply your new knowledge of open and closed questions. Unless, okay, so best practices when presenting. Call the other agent instead of keeping it all digital. You don't want to just simply text them. You don't want to simply email them because what? Communication can get lost. Tonality can get lost in a text, in an email. You're not hearing the tone of what they're saying, right? You can't read between the lines with text and email accurately, whereas you can with voice. Best practice with call the other agent. Pay attention to nonverbal cues like pauses, voice qualities. Again, text, email will not communicate that. Keep quiet once you present an offer. Well, here's my, so they're offering $650. All right, well, here's my offer, my client's offer. I know they're offering $575. I know it's a low offer, but please bring it to your seller and see what they say. Are they following rule number 3 right there?
No.
No, exactly, Sarah. They're not. You're hijacking the negotiation by not being quiet once you present your offer.
And you're also introducing the idea that it was low. They might have not thought that otherwise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a really important lesson. Number 3 right there. It's a really important point. Listen carefully to what is important to the other party, right? We've seen that it's not always price. We've just seen an example of that. Not everybody needs to move out. They don't want it to close in 30 days if you're a seller, or 15 days. I've got sellers right now that want 90 days to move out. They want a longer time, right? Stay calm and relaxed. Again, here's one thing that I like to tell my team is that if we want the deal as the agent, if we want it to happen more than the client does, right? More than the buyer, more than the seller, there's a problem, right? Because then we've got the commission breath going on. Then we can no longer act as a fiduciary representing their interest, the customer's interest, which is the Y4C2Ts, the Keller Williams culture, but that's just business, right? That's salesmanship. To be a good agent and to represent the client, we need to stay calm and relaxed and not be stressed out over, is it going to happen or not? We're the professional. We're here to bring the deal together if it can be done. And one thing I've heard in this business is that you're going to have hundreds or thousands of deals in your career. Don't worry if one goes south, right? Just do the best you can. Follow the Y4C2Ts that we had there. Maybe have it right up there in your bullpen where you're making your calls. Not every deal is going to happen, right? I've heard it said at the real estate school here in South Florida 24 years ago. They said like 1 out of every 3 deals. I don't know if it's still accurate. I don't know if it's accurate where you guys are in your parts of the country, but 1 out of every 3 deals offers will close, right? I see Takesha nodding her head. So with that expectation, you're managing your own expectations. So so, okay, if I know that 1 out of 3 offers will close, what do I need to spend my time doing as an agent? Anyone?
Tightening up your skills, whether it be your offering techniques, whether it be the sellers, and just finding out where your loopholes are of where it is that you're losing your deals at.
Absolutely. Bulletproof the transaction is what Gary Keller calls it, the founder of Keller Williams, co-founder. Bulletproof the transactions. And it means be comfortable, get in the process of always writing offers. Because you know that 1 out of 3 is going to close according to statistics that I've heard. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But if you have that, I find that that's comforting because it means that I need to be always getting offers on the table and moving them forward, knowing that 33% of them will eventually turn into a closing. And what Takesha said, bulletproof the transaction, tighten it up, make sure that they're bulletproof, that they can't fall apart, that you've communicated clearly what happens in terms of the contract, closing date, first deposit, second deposit, that type of thing. Focus on the customer's needs. Absolutely. Give your offer the best chance. The way you do that is by speaking with the listing agent. The way you do that is by getting the listing agent on the phone with your trusted mortgage broker who you think will be able to persuade the listing agent that this is a really strong buyer right here. They got great qualifications. That's how you give your offer the best chance. You give your offer the best chance by making sure that your offer is super clean, that there's no typos anywhere, there's no mistakes. You've got the proof of funds attached to it. You've got all the addendums attached to it. You've got your pre-approval, or someone said on the chat here earlier, even better, your approval letter from a bank showing how qualified these buyers are. Desktop underwriting is something I look for as a listing agent. Desktop underwriting is another level of underwriting for a buyer that they've gone through the hoops and the bank says that they're qualified. It shows their credit scores, etc. But that is what an example of giving your offer the best chance. Let me see if I think there was okay. Acknowledge and affirm common ground. What do they mean by that? What does that mean?
State the obvious.
What's that?
I said, state the obvious. You're just recapping, letting them know you're paying attention, you're following along.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You're following along, you're paying attention, stating the obvious. You're also saying, hey, we agree on the closing date. Both the buyer and seller are totally in line with 45 days closing. Buyer and seller both agree on a 7-day inspection period. Buyer and seller both agree that the shed comes with the house. The only thing we have to get agreement on at this point is the price of the property, right? So right now we're about 50,000 apart. The seller just countered at this price. Pretend I'm the seller. I'm the listing agent. Seller just countered at this price. Do me a favor. Let's say, do me a favor, Takesha. My seller just countered at, the seller just countered at this price. Can you do me a favor? Please get back to me with a counter from your buyer, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure your counter is not rejected. I'm going to push my buyer to either accept your counter offer, Takesha, or to make a counter of their own. Is that fair?
That's fair, but may I ask you, Jason, is there something in particular that the seller is looking for when we counter our offer?
It's a good question. Well, the seller is actually 3 brothers. So the one that I'm negotiating with, he's the owner, he's the head of the trust who's been tasked with selling this house now that the parents have passed, right? So yes, he's the trustee. He's the one who has ultimate decision-making authority. But in order for him to stay in good rapport with his 2 younger brothers, he has to communicate to them. So it's not just him. He has to be able to go back to them with something. So that's why, just to give you clarity and transparency, where they're coming from, that's the situation over here. So I appreciate your patience as we try to get all 3 brothers on board. Does that make sense?
It does. I appreciate that.
No problem. I just wanted to give you the landscape so you see what's happening over on the seller's end here. And I'm doing that without disclosing too much, right? I'm showing transparency. I'm being honest. I'm letting, because you're going to communicate that to your buyer now, right? So your buyer is going to say, oh, I get it. I get it. Okay. So we got to make sure all three brothers are on board. So that's important to, I'm not revealing too much. I'm not revealing what their numbers are. I'm not revealing, like I've got a situation right now in a property that we're selling. One brother, same situation. There's 4 brothers and sisters. The parents passed and they're selling the family homestead. One brother wants 1.8. The sister wants $1 million. She wants her cash and she wants to get out of there. And then there's another brother. He's tasked with getting all these cats together, you know, because it's like herding cats. How do you make everybody happy? He's the trustee, but without breaking your ties with your brothers and your sisters over the sale of the parents' house. So these are the types of dynamics that can happen in a deal, if that makes sense. We just, you know, the human emotions, the process, and we're just, again, why 4C2Ts is so helpful, because if we just go through these bullet points, we'll be okay. We'll get through it. We'll get through it. Just make sure, you know, win-win or no deal. Together, everyone achieves more. All those things that we had there. Your customer is always right. It's those things that we mentioned there. Ask what and how questions as opposed to yes and no questions. You don't want to simply get one. You want open-ended. What would make your seller happy? Like you just said, Takesha. How can we do this so that both seller and buyer would be happy with the outcome, which is an open-ended question, as opposed to a yes or no question. Positioning is a process. Know when to walk away. And that's a really good one, right? For negotiations, what is your ultimate power when you're in a negotiation? If you're a seller, if you're a buyer, what's your power in the negotiation?
The power would be just understanding and knowing like when enough is enough, like when you know how far you're gonna go.
Absolutely, Adam. You're willing to walk away. At this point, I'll walk away, and you're comfortable doing it. And that's really where the power comes from in any negotiation. Who is more comfortable walking away from the deal than the other? Yeah. So okay, so any ahas? Anyone wrote down any notes that that will help them moving forward? Anything you can share with the rest of our group that will help us all get better from this material?
I really liked Takesha's thing that she shared with us.
Yes. Thank you, Takesha. That was awesome. Yes, Angie. Yep. Can you get one more? Let's see here.
I have one more.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I really liked too how you kind of broke it down, and you kind of broke it down to like the ridiculous thing. I was in like, you know, how much are you gonna not, like as in for like the $10,000 difference of how you broke that down. I like that too.
Awesome. Awesome, Angie. Thank you for sharing that. I think somebody else was sharing something there.
Yeah, it was it's not something that you like shared directly, but in sitting through this, just you didn't really mention the word, but the confidence in knowing how you're going to approach each contract negotiation. I feel like that's being laid out in all this, because I come from a sales background for cars for years, and there were times where if you didn't know what you were like trying to sell or what you were trying to provide in services wise, you were going to miss out on a deal. So I think the emphasis that I'm seeing, at least, is just me, but the confidence and the knowledge and being able to go in there to be able to help. So it makes them feel comfortable in working with you as a seller, representing the seller or buyer.
Nice. Like that, Adam. Absolutely. If I'm nervous or if you're nervous and you're trying to guide your buyer or your seller, is that going to help a deal happen? Are they going to follow our advice to do what we think needs, as we interpret what's happening here, what we recommend? Are they going to follow that recommendation? If we're not confident?
Yes, yeah, exactly, word for word.
Exactly. So how do we convey confidence? How do we become confident in this business? And how do we convey confidence versus inconfidence? If that's such a word, non-confidence.
I think it's word. Yeah, yeah, we'll go with it.
I think, what do you think? What does it take to be confident in this when you're having these negotiations and advising
I
them?
think personally for me, I just think like you gave examples like this was another night where they said, you know, research the area, you know, what homes, like you said, the example of how many months inventory is this, you know, you got to lay it all out. You do so in a way to really put it in a nutshell, you can't just go in there winging it. And I know that's not our goal to go in there and wing it like, oh, I think we can make an offer on this. That's not going to really show confidence or the confidence you have in what you're saying. I just see it personally because you know, like I said, I just came from a cards background for years, and there were just times where I just told the guy, man, you could have just researched the AC unit, researched how many miles this engine goes, you know, just stuff like that, so that way you know how to present it to the
Yes.
customer, and then you can make the sale happen.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any thoughts on how to be confident, how to show confidence in a negotiation? What is required to appear confident? Know your market well. I heard Yolanda, I see Yolanda saying, absolutely. Know your market well. Yes, yes. So back to trend graphics, back to months of inventory. I could go to your city right now, wherever you guys are, right? You're all over the place in California, West Coast, East Coast. I could go to any one of your zip codes where you guys operate. And if you give me a house, say 700 to 800,000 or 500 to 600, whatever, in your zip code, if I have that software that tells me if it's a buyer's market, meaning more than 6 months of inventory, or a seller's market, less than 6 months of inventory, I can show confidence when talking to a buyer or seller simply by having market knowledge, as we just saw there on the chat. Because I have that basic level of market knowledge that it's a seller's market. They're going to be getting multiple offers. Oh yeah, it's been on the market here now 3 days, and it's 2 months of inventory, less than 6. There's going to be multiple offers. You're better off if you want to win this property, Mr. Buyer, from Oregon, from Boston. I would go in at asking price or above. That's the opening bid price. I don't even need to be in your market to know that that's the advice I would give them, because I would have a certain level of market knowledge. There are people in our office that have been doing business for 10 years, 20 years maybe, that don't know that as they start the negotiation with their buyer or seller. So if there's one thing you could take out from a negotiation standpoint, whether you represent buyers or sellers from tonight's class, is to figure out what software you need to do, get access to the software that tells you how many months of inventory there is in your zip code in a certain price range, because that will give you a lot of market knowledge without going granular in the MLS and the CMAs and all that. Sometimes people get distracted by the CMAs and the cost per square foot when all they really needed to know is a seller's or a buyer's market. That's how I can advise my clients how to best operate in that environment. To your point, then again, in the chat, sorry, I don't have your name right here in front of me. I'm not in the chat, but that would be Yolanda. Know your market well. That's part of the knowing your market well, in my opinion. Months of inventory. Awesome. Thank you, Gerald. Appreciate that. Okay, great. So moving on here. All right. So here's the eval. If you guys wouldn't mind, I mean, I should have dwelled on this earlier. If you could do a quick evaluation of this class and the last class, how did it work for you? It just helps us get better. My name is Jason Smith. I don't know if I'm in the drop down there. I'm going to put my information in the meantime in the chat. So if you ever need anything in Miami, South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, I'm an instructor with KW University, but I'm also a real estate agent. And if my team and I can ever help you with your sellers that are leaving South Florida or they're moving to South Florida, I would love to be a resource for you. I'll put my information in the chat if I can hear it here. If I can put it right here, excuse me here. Okay, Jason Smith is my name. Phone number is 786-326 8115. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm in Miami, Florida. Website. Getting a cough drop here. While you guys do your evaluation, I'll get my little Ricola. Okay, sorry. Miami, Florida. Our website is showcasemiami.com. Best way to stay in touch, if you'd like to, on Instagram is at Jason Smith Showcase. And if you want to put in your phone, KW Miami or Miami agent Jason Smith, that way you'll have me on speed dial. That's my number right there, if I can ever be a resource for you. If you have any follow-up questions about the material that we talked about today, I'm here to, here to serve. Cynthia, pleasure. Thank you everybody for your feedback today, for engaging and playing along and being open-minded. Want to wrap up here with any final ahas on the course material. We're finishing a bit early, but we don't have to, unless you guys have anything you want to ask, any thoughts that come to mind, anything that we didn't cover that you think we should have covered.
Jason, I did have a question earlier in the chat when you asked us what we wanted to cover tonight. How do you handle other realtors that are bullies?
Good one. Let's see. How do you handle realtors? That's a good one right there. How do you handle realtors that are bullies? I'm going to just take it off the share here for a second. Who asking that question?
I did, Angie.
Angie. Try to keep your emotions. I mean, I'm open to other people's suggestions on here. There's 50 of us or so. Part of me says that's how they're operating the best they can in the moment, this realtor, right? There's no way that they're going to affect how I feel. I'm simply here to get the deal done. I want to communicate to this buyer agent or this other agent that I want to get the deal done. I want to honor the world as they see it. And I think that's a very good question, because not even the other realtor, it could be that your client is a bully, your seller, your buyer. I've had that in the past, right? And just honoring where they're coming from, that's their reality that they're experiencing, which is creating that type of behavior. So honor that reality, let them live in their reality, because there's nothing I'm going to say that will change that reality, right? I think it's very important. I had this conversation with an agent on our team and about a year ago. And we said people have their own realities. There's so many realities. There's so many social media. There are different points of view. They're going to think what they're going to think. And I've got to honor that, because I'm not going to change that point of view, that way of being. So work with it and just reminding them that we both want to do a deal here. Here's an expression. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell. At the end of the day, that's what's going on. So how can we make it happen? Make sense? So that's just take yourself. Mike Ferry, he's a really good trainer. I don't know if anyone's ever heard, by show of hands, Mike Ferry. Tom Ferry is his son. Great trainers, sales trainers in real estate. And Mike, the elder statesman, if you will, he's been doing this for 45 years as a trainer for listing agents. He says, ego will kill deals, meaning the agent's ego. If you can take your ego out of it, because there's enough ego and emotion going on between buyer and seller, the agent's job is not to add on to that ego. The agent's job, as we saw in the material earlier tonight, is to remain calm, level-headed, no ego, facilitate a deal, and be a calming influence in the deal, not have commission breath, not be attached to the outcome. Just keeping the main thing. Buyer wants to buy, seller wants to sell. How can we make that a just simple reminder, you know? And I think that's a tool, a technique that can help alleviate if the bully wants to be the bully, give the bully what they're looking for. You know, what are they looking for? What do they need from you in order to feel that strength that they're looking for? Let them have it. If that's what it takes to make this deal happen. There's another thing called the DISC profile. Anyone heard of the DISC profile? DISC. I see Takesha raising her hand. They offer it for free on different websites. It's really important to know the 4 personality types, especially when it comes to negotiating. I like that one. Always a sidebar and ask the agent how you're doing. That's a good one, Takesha. Yes. It's a good question, Belinda said. Know where you are in the DISC profile. You're a driver, interpersonal, stability, or very cautious. Those are 4 different personality types. And you know, about 25% of the population is one or the other. So number 1, you have to know where you are in the DISC profile, what your personality is. Once you understand that, then you have to be able to pivot and be versatile, because there's all kinds of personality of those 4 personality types. They're all out there in the population. So, okay, if you know, okay, I'm a driver, or I'm interpersonal, or I'm high detail. Okay, this person's a driver. Let's say this person's a driver. They're appearing to be a bully. They're short and to the point. They're not very polite. Okay, there's a way to deal with that type of individual, and a way not to deal with them would be to have to go long, talk a lot, when their personality profile might be quick. Time is money. Let's cut to the chase. You don't want to talk their ear off, right? Even if that might be your natural personality style, which is a strength, right? Because you're the life of the party type of thing, for instance. But in this situation, when dealing with a bully, if that's what you see what's going on, if they're a driver, again, there's no good or bad personality type, but just recognize where you are and recognize where you have to be versatile to mirror and match that other agent, so that you're communicating more on their wavelength. Specifically, it might be shorter sentences, not lots of explanation and talking. Just if they're a yes or no response, you do, hey, do we have a deal or no? That would be a way to deal with a driver. Yes or no? Let's cut to the chase. Time is money. Speak the way they want it. I'm going on a long time about this, but does that help at all in terms of dealing? A, know where you are in the DISC profile. B, figure out who your buyer is. Where are they on the DISC profile? Where's your seller? Where's the other agent? And how do you know? You ask them questions, open-ended questions, get them talking. They'll tell you exactly who they are by the way they answer your question. So case in point, I'll just share this real quickly. We have a few minutes left here, but this is a very important one in selling. DISC profile. Let's see here. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share something else real quickly. Share. Okay. Sorry if I'm to disappoint. I don't think I have access to that right now. You just go to DISC profile, take the DISC assessment for yourself, and see where you are in the DISC. And then that's step number 1. And then maybe take 1 or 2 classes on that. And it really would help all of us by doing that. Awesome. Thank you again, folks. It's 10:54. Anything that we didn't discuss regarding making offers, writing offers, receiving offers, negotiating, anything we didn't discuss that we should have discussed, that you wish we would have discussed?
Yeah, this is kind of generalized question, and you can be brief with it. You don't have to like go into whole detail about it. But with the current market, and I hear from a lot of people, new or experienced, it's hard to get somebody. There's just not a lot of inventory everywhere. At least here in Northern California, it's tough. My question really is, what are your You can go like in like a full rant with the question I'm asking, but what do you suggest? Is there, you got people saying, oh, you should get a billboard sign. Oh, like, can you do that much more to go over the top just to start getting leads that then develop into hopefully contracts and so on?
Good question. Good question right there. The more you prospect, Gary Keller in the book, the Red Book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, he would say, Adam, it's prospecting based, marketing enhanced. So you've got to be focusing on prospecting, getting appointments. We're in the appointment setting business, right? So whoever makes the most appointments with buyers and sellers for consultations is going to do the most business, period. End of story. So if nothing else from this session tonight, understand that we're in the appointment setting business, just like you were in the car selling business, right? The more people you're showing cars to, the more deals you're going to do. It's just a numbers game.
Yeah.
So the same applies no matter if it's a seller's market, a buyer's market, in real estate, it doesn't matter. In all markets, whoever has the most appointments is going to help them. Here's one thing I've learned from my coach: don't say do the most deals. The way he communicates to his team is how many families did we serve this year, right? You want to change that that lexicon, that language from doing a deal, number of sales, to families served. Hey, I'm so proud. We served 50 families this year, right?
Gotcha.
So to your point, it doesn't matter what the market is doing. I prefer when it's a challenging market, quite honestly, because it means that you get to really do the work and just keep focusing, and buyers and sellers need you even more in a challenging market, in a shifting market, right? So that's all noise. Oh, the market's doing this, the market's doing that. It's all noise. Just execute, focus on what you can control as an agent, which is what number of appointments you can get per week or per month, and try to get number of appointments.
Gotcha. That was a very good response. Thank you. I appreciate that.
My pleasure, Adam. My pleasure. Great question. Very good question. Very, very good question. 3 minutes to go, folks. Are there any other things that you got on your mind? Questions, ahas, things that we didn't cover that you wish we would have covered? It's not over. It ain't over till it's over. You can type in the chat, or you can say it out loud, whatever you like. And by show of hands, who's going to follow us on Instagram? We'll follow you back. I really want to have a connection here. So you consider Jason and his team, your South Florida, your Miami resource, if we can ever help. I think one way to do that, you'll stay connected on Instagram.
What was it on Instagram?
It's at Jason Smith Showcase. At Jason Smith Showcase. Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Olga. Thank you, Ethan. My pleasure. Amanda, thank you. Miranda, thank you. Dominique, thank you. Angie, thank you. Thank you for your participation as well. Same with you, Takesha. I love that question. Also, you may have to sidebar and ask the agent, how are you doing? That's a really good one. That's like a pattern interrupt. How are you doing? I like that a lot. Let's see. Cynthia raised her hand. Someone was going to say something?
He said, thank you from Rancho Mirage, California.
Okay.
Market Center.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Where are you guys located?
Rancho Mirage, California, near Palm Springs.
Oh, Rancho Mirage. Yes. Wow. Yes. That's great. The windmills. A lot of windmills over there. Driving over to LA. I've done that drive many times. Beautiful. Has it changed a lot since 1993, that area?
Yes.
It's like different.
A lot. You wouldn't even recognize it.
I'll bet. Palm Desert, Rancho Mirage. I remember all those places. Is the Stofers Esmeralda still there? The Hyatt Grand Champions, the Marriott Desert Springs?
Yes, they're all still here.
Nice. Well, let's see. Well, thank you, everybody. Great to meet you.
Thank you, Jason. You did an excellent job.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Masterclass.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank
Thanks,
you, guys.
Jason.
Appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone.
Mhm.
Stay in touch. Stay in touch.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.